Okay, so this is our part two, pretty much going into Arnold 2015, which has changed everything. So even the presets in Substance Painter are still not up to date for that. I just want to let you guys know that you do not need to have two different UV sets here, or I should say texture sets, to do this opacity stuff. The only issue with using two different UV sets is that the benefit is that, of course, that you get to, if you wanted to, without the showing opacity stuff where you can have gunk on the sides, you could have glass that you could get refraction with the refraction in iRay. But in general, you could just use basically Mesh ID based masks on a single piece of geometry that has all the UVs laid out, and it's all one material that's exported as an FBX out of Maya. But in this case, like I said in the last lesson, we are ready to export. So I'm going to come to that opacity layer that's at the bottom of my glass, which I'm on right now, which is this glass here. And we have the base color set to black, very important, and the opacity that we just so we can see, physically see, the roughness there while we're working. And now I'm going to bring it down. And again, as you can see, I don't see any roughness now because it looks transparent. Although if I go over here and hit the letter C and toggle through, you can see that I do have a, there's height information and there's roughness information. So it is there, it's just you're not seeing it, so to speak. Okay, so let's talk about how to export this out. So I'm going to go to File, Export Texture. And we're going to build and configure our own version of the current Arnold AI Standard or AI Standard UDIM. It doesn't matter which one. Obviously, the UDIM is for multiple UV sets, which I'm not really concerned about, or multiple UV sets out of the 0 to 1, 0 to 2, 0 to 3 space. But if you take a look here, you have the AI, here's Arnold 5 AI Standard Surface, right? So I'm going to take that and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. So we have like an extra version there, so to speak. And there it is, the Arnold AI Standard Surface. Let's go ahead and take a look at our options. We have base color, metalness, roughness, normal, height, and emissive. Okay. So a couple things we want to add is the inclusion of the opacity. So as you can see here, this is blah, 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 blah. I'm going to go ahead and copy this base color information, Control C. And again, it's reading off the base color. You can see it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye. I'm going to remake this, but I'm not going to do RGB. I'm going to do RGB plus A. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and click RGB plus A and quickly move this back to the top where it belongs and paste in that data I had before, which is my base color. I'm going to take my actual base color here and click and drag it into the RGB. Choose RGB channel. And then for the opacity, I'm going to go ahead and click the opacity button here, put it to the alpha, and choose gray channel. So now I have 4 channels total for this right here. Metalness, roughness, normal. The height information is all being propagated into the normal map, so I'm not going to include the height map. You can if you like, and you can usually use it for displacement maps, and I have a video on displacement maps. But you don't have to, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And now I have all of this set up. So emissive is good, normal is good, all this fun stuff. So I'm going to come over here to the setup here, double click it, and I'll just call it my real Arnold. So I have that preset ready to go whenever I'm going to do stuff in the future, and everything is looking good. So let's go to our export. And I'm going to go ahead and choose my configuration, which will be Real Arnold, the new configuration. I'm going to put this as a PNG 8-bit file somewhere. I don't know where. Let's go ahead and make a folder in here. Create a new folder here. Junk. Why not? And throw that in there. And I just hit select folder. So I have the folder selected. I have my configuration selected, dilation, who cares, and I have my glass and my shell. And the unfortunate reality is I'm basically getting, I'm going to have to set up 2 networks here, but it's okay. You can kind of see the configuration, mesh glass, base color, blah, 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 blah. 4096. Let you guys know also, since the newest version of Substance Painter, it successfully does convert, even though it says experimental, in other words, may not work. It does do a really good job of up converting to 8 gig. And what it does is it takes every single paint stroke that you've ever done, which is all saved in history inside of Substance Painter, and that's why the files are huge, and reprojects them at 8K. So I found that if you really want to have some high-res stuff, you can do that, or you just optimize your UV space a little bit better with multiple UDIMs and just more UV space. So it's up to you. 4K is just fine, so we're going to go ahead and keep that going there. So with that all said, I think we're all good to go. And yes, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit export. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this up and see what we got. So we have our normal map, roughness map. Here's your emissive map, just so you can kind of see it. And it just is black colored and so forth. And then we have our original color maps in here. So we are good to go. So let's jump back into Maya. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate for you guys how to set up basic a material that's from Substance Painter inside of Maya, obviously. It took a lot of kind of messing with the channels to get this to work right regarding the glass stuff, okay? So that's it's the big reality here of what we're dealing with, and it was very, very tricky with the setups. But let's just start up with a material that really doesn't have any glass material. So I'm going to take this base here, I'm going to right-click it, and say Assign New Material. And under Arnold, we're going to use that AI Standard Surface material, which is new. And there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and just come up to the top. Here is the base color. We're going to put the weight all the way up to 1.0. The color, we're going to click on the checker box. We're going to hit File, and I'm going to go ahead and find that file that I was working on. And you can see I have text files and PNG files. I've already practiced this, so what happens is it takes your PNG file and converts it to text when it renders inside of Arnold. So again, I just got to find the mesh shell base color. There it is, PNG. Hit open. I'll turn on shading hardware texturing. And then I'm just going to use this little arrow up to go back to the AI standard surface. The metalness, I'll go ahead and click on that and click File and go ahead and plug in metalness. And let's find that. So mesh shell metalness, which is basically black. If you have no metal in your object, you just leave it black. You don't have to actually plug in a file texture. Okay, so from there we'll keep moving down. So specularity, here is the specular roughness or the roughness pass. So we leave weight at 1 and the color at white, and we take the roughness, click on that and hit File. And we're going to go ahead and plug in the roughness. So I'll just grab that really quick, and there it is. It's pretty rough, as you can see, because it's white. Alright, and then go back up and keep going down here. So transmission is where we deal with, translucency, glassy type stuff, so we're not playing with that at all. So under emission, we do have an emission, which is like kind of a glowy stuff. So I'm going to take the weight up to 1 and put the color to a file node, which is our mesh shell emissive. Which looks like that. Which means black, basically, has a transparency. So there we have our glow-in-the-dark type stuff. I'm going to go ahead and click this up and move down the pipe here. And we have opacity, which we are not using, but we are using bump map. This is under the tab geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the bump map, choose a file, switch this to tangent space normal map, click on this little arrow here, set this color space to raw, and plug in the actual normal map. So there's the normal map there. There we go. So you can see the normal map starting to affect the little wrinkles in the cloth there. And at any one time, you can actually set the bump depth down if you think it's too intense, and actually bring it down from values to 0 to 1. But you can kind of leave that for now. It's kind of reading it pretty accurately. So that was pretty easy, right? So let's go ahead and do a render. I have a AI sky dome light with a HDRI attached to the color, and my exposure is set to 0.298. I also have a area light, AI, Arnold area light here. So area light and sky dome light. And I have that set to an intensity of 10, and it's set to like a quad, like that. So I have it very close. So I want to be able to kind of examine how the lighting is going on. So again, I could just go ahead and go to Arnold and do Arnold render view. and hit the play button here just to see what I get so far. And as you can see, we haven't assigned a material yet to this, but this is looking good. These areas are glowing in the dark. We have a little bit of bumpiness here. I added a little bit of depth here, so you can see this is a little bit of a height going on. Again, normal maps only go so high. They don't really push out really, really heavy. So that's what it is. So I'll close this up. I'll grab this material now, and this is the fun part for the glass. So I'm going to right-click and say Assign New Material. And under Arnold, I'm going to make another AI standard surface. And we'll just go ahead and call this the glass. Or call it glassy. There we go. So with glassy, this one's going to be a little bit tricky. The base color, I'm going to go ahead, put that again up, and take the color information, hit File, and plug in our color. So again, this is Mesh Glass Base Color. And you can see there it is. And it would have been nice to have, I could have actually painted some depth of kind of like bumpiness here for this brown. It's just very boring brown color. There's no different variations in the color that I painted, if you recall. Having that granularity in the form of a normal map, also the color, it should be a granular color too, would have been nice, but I didn't kind of plan ahead on that. So it's going to be kind of a boring dirt along the side. So I'm going to go ahead and jump up again. And keep moving down the pipe. So we have diffuse roughness. So that stays at metalness. Is there metal? We don't know. Let's go ahead and check our map. So I'll go ahead and click File. It did pump out a metal map for my glass. So there's that. It's black, so it doesn't really matter. So then I'll just pump this back up. Specularity. We have the weight to 1, the color to black, and then again we have our roughness here. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing again. Click here, choose File, click in here, choose my glass roughness, and go ahead and click Open, and then go up. Keep going down. Now we have this thing called transmission. Now this gets rather interesting. So what I'm going to do is for the weight itself, I'm going to go ahead and click on the weight, little checker box, and I'm going to choose a file. And that file, I'm going to go ahead and plug in. I'm going to have nothing plugged in with it, right? So they're just going to leave that empty. I'm going to go up one. And we're going to come over here to emission. I don't believe there is an emission pass for this, so we can close that. And there is a bump map, so again, I'm going to click here, go to File, click on Tangent Space Normal Map, click on this little arrow here, make sure this is set to raw, and plug in my normal map, which is my mesh glass normal map. Where are you? I know you're here. There you are. Okay, so I got that one. And okay, so it's looking good so far. Let's kind of just pump up, make sure we got everything. Go up another level, and we should be good. So what I'm going to do is go in my hypershade and map out the glassy. So I'm going to go ahead and find glassy. Here she is. Right-click and say Graph Network. I can kind of take a look at our network here. I'm going to get a little bit closer here. We're going to have to do a little bit of wiring here because everything is messed up right now, just to let you know. So here's that file node that we have nothing in that's attached to the transmission, out alpha transmission. So what I'm going to do for that, I'll just show you, is actually I didn't even need to make this. Kind of dumb. But anyway, here's my base color. My base color has the opacity map on it. So what we have to do is invert the alpha. So I'm going to go ahead and type tab in here and create a reverse node. There we go. And I'm going to open the input up because you can see I cannot connect the out alpha. I can only connect it because it's a 1 channel, not 3 channels. So I'm going to take the out alpha of my base color, set that to input X, and then the output X, I'm going to plug that into my transmission. Which means that this guy right here that's doing nothing, and I shouldn't have created him anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to delete him. Here we go. And this is going to get us a good start. So let's go ahead and see what we have by jumping in, rendering our scene. You can already start to see that it's starting to look good here. We got the bumpiness coming out here. The transparency looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and do a quick Arnold render view. and hit play and see what we get. And the first error you're going to see is a rather odd one, and that is, why can't I see through this? Well, the geometry that you have has to have the, let's see here, under Arnold, you need to turn off opaque. And it should do it. So I'm going to update the view one more time here. I'll close this. And we'll do a quick IPR again. Arnold render view. Hit play. And let's see. Okay, so there should be an issue here. Let's start bringing this light closer here. We'll start to see maybe inside a little bit. And we're still not seeing through yet. So let me go ahead and grab that piece of geometry here. Take a look at Glassy. And let's see here. Our specular weight is correct. Let's go to my transmission. That's correct. And what else we got here? And the problem is that when you're dealing with glass, you really can't have a metalness option here, unfortunately. I guess that's a flaw. So if I wanted these pieces to be metallic, I would be in trouble. So kind of as a downfall, but you can right-click and say break connection on the metalness and bring the metalness to 0, and now you see a transparency. Now, things are way too diffused or rough for me to see the interior here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here really quick. I'll regraph this out. And I'm going to go ahead and take that our roughness layer here, and I want to add a nice little AI multiplier in here. So if you hit tab, you can tape AI multiply. And same thing again, you got to expand both input, or just input 1 I should say, and go out alpha input red, because we only can have one signal. And I can disconnect this guy. And then I will take the output red to my specular roughness, like that. And what this allows for you to do is to have this secondary input bar that you could pull back and forth. So now if you take a look, I can dial this back and dial it in to add that nice glossiness. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. Now, you can see this is an exposure reality here. So if I bring it all the way up, the roughness of the dirt, which the dirt should be very rough, okay, it makes sense, but it's super cloudy back here. But as I decrease this, bring this down to say an input of, oh, I don't know, 0, right? We're basically looking at things, but here's the problem. The actual brown dirt, which should not be specular at all, should be very rough, has been brought back down to 0. So you see there's a reflectional hint there as you kind of look at this. So how can we fix that? Well, you got to think of math in the form of how things work, and you probably want to use a gamma correct as opposed to a multiplier, right? So how can we do that? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our inputs here. And instead of an AI multiplier, let's go ahead and create a gamma correct, because that will lock down the absolute blacks and the absolute whites and just adjust the middle ground. We'll still have an issue here. Again, it won't be perfect, but I'll put the, oops, right there. I'll put alpha to the value X and output the value X to the specular roughness. So with that said, you can see you know, I have this option here of 1, 1, and 1. I don't have a bar, which kind of sucks. But basically I'm dealing with this channel here, and I can hold down Control left mouse button and drag this back and forth and get a different result. So let's see if we can kind of keep this relatively frosty, but not too much. There we go. So I'm putting in a value of like maybe 1.4 or something. Let's see how that's doing. It doesn't seem to be affecting this area here. But again, that's the only options you have. You can use exposure, or you can use, you know, there is some AI, maybe it's AI specific that we need this. So what I'm going to try instead of the color correct is I'm going to go ahead and choose an AI color correct is what I'm going to use. So you can see under utilities, there's AI color correct, and this baby has everything: gamma, hue shift, saturation, contrast, exposure. So what I can do is come over here to the out alpha, and again you got to put this into the input R because it's only one channel. And then you got your input R, output R going into your specular roughness. There we go. So now let's see if we can kind of fiddle with this color correction, see if we can get some nice results here. Yeah, seems like it's working. Yes, it is. It's working fine. These pieces right here are actually taped on top of the actual glass. It's kind of confusing. So by taking gamma, I can adjust this down. See if it'll bring it down here. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's liking it. Let's try it again. You got exposure, and your multiplier will do basically what we did before. But the problem with the multiplier is it's going to pull down the white value, and the white value would mean that we can't seem to keep the roughness of the brown here. That's what I'm trying to do. So it's a bit tricky. Gamma should do this. Again, I could probably bring this down to like 0.32, yet it's not really helping. So I add a value of like 0.4. See if that does it. Nope. Let's try 0.1. Nope. 0.01. This is the fun of Maya here, So let's see if I can kind of play around here. Let's see, alpha doesn't. Again, this is just color correcting this specific channel. So again, you have a choice here through this process, which is very, very, I should say, annoying, if anything. So you could use a mix node in Arnold and mix together by AI mix shader and put this, make another material with just this here and the transparency and mix that together. That's another option, but as you can see here, I'm not liking this because the dirt is shiny and I don't want the dirt to be shiny. So to kind of remedy this issue we're having where the actual mud is actually coming in as very shiny, we can kind of play around a little bit with that roughness pass, because again, this issue is roughness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause this really quick and come in here and show you a couple things. So we have our specular roughness coming in from this AI correction, which is not really doing much for us, except the fact that we have an exposure option here, right? So if I put this exposure back up to 1 and come over here and hit play, we get our nice, not shiny dirt, but we still get this as just way overboard in regards to roughness. So how do we maintain this as a color white and shift the color of what's going on here? Well, a good operation is maybe just an add operation. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and take this input here, and we're going to add, what can we actually add? We can actually add the base color alpha, right, which is the black and white alpha information. So we can go ahead and take that and add that together and make that into a roughness. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the tab key and type AI add. This is an Arnold specific adder, and again, this is a 1 number input, so I'm going to take the out alpha, plug it into the input here, and it will take the out alpha, plug it into the output 2R, and the addition of those two together is what will be our specular roughness. And now we can go ahead and see what we get. Ta-da! Yay, we solved the problem to a certain degree. Because if we wanted to have specular highlights of little granularities here on the dirt, we'd be in serious trouble, to a certain degree. Again, you can kind of, if you wanted to, you can also do an opacity based on one to the other here, or you could actually plus together. Oops, this likes to dock a lot. This drives me nuts about this version of Maya.
what the? Oh, there it is. Oh, it's gone. Oh, it's back. Okay, so as you can see here, if I wanted to, I can do another add based on, you know, this incoming input for black and white to increase it back and forth. The only issue with this is you might find yourself getting black edges here, which is a bit tricky, like I said. So again, the other thing you can do here is kind of mix these two together to a certain degree and kind of bring back, add in the addition of the old one here. So here's the color correction. So we've added a black and white map on top of that, and now we can do another AI add like this. Getting confused yet? And we can take the output of this to this input. There we go. And take the output of the original, right, to this. Actually, no, I'll leave that be. I'm going to leave that be right now. And I'll use this to color, add this together here, and then we'll take the output R and plug that into specular roughness. And now what I have on here is I can add white or black. I could add more white to this, which is more roughness. You can also do a subtract as well to kind of pull it off. So again, it is what it is. It's a work in progress. If I get any improvements on it, I'll let you know. But as you can see here, yeah, this is still a bit of a nightmare. So I'm going to come back to my color correct node and play with the multiplier. And as I start to dial down that multiplier, I get different variations there of that background. And it doesn't look like it's liking this Maya-based material here. So I'm going to swap out this AI color correct for a AI exposure. Or let's go back to my utilities here. AI multiply, my fault. So again, I'm going to go, output R and come over here and put R. There we go. So this multiplier seems to actually work. I don't know why the other one doesn't. So I'll just take the input down to black, and now you can start to see, we should start to see this come into focus. There we go. So just use the AI multiplier nodes and all that. So you can see this is a bit crazy. A lot of it's due to the refraction of the sharp angles and so forth, but it is working. But that seems like a good compromise for what we're dealing with. And you guys just got to experiment. Like I said, this stuff is not easy to get into, but you just kind of getting your feet wet really helps you kind of figure out how can I solve these problems and so forth throughout the process.
VFX for Filmmakers proudly releases Scratch to Substance Volume 1. Whether you're an environment modeler creating assets for a game engine or a visual effects specialist looking to create pre-rendered photorealistic worlds, this package is for you. In this training video, we start with modeling in Maya via photographic perspective. After proper care is taken for UV layout, the models are brought into Substance Painter for materials and texturing, then exported to both Arnold in Maya and Unreal 4. Throughout this 10-hour course, we cover photographic modeling techniques, seamless UV strategies, building out a high-res mesh for baking, ID mask creation in Maya, map baking techniques in Substance Painter, fill layers versus layers, creating custom smart materials generators, building Substance Designer templates, creating materials in Designer, stencils, decals, material stencil projections, grunge maps, procedurals, filters, dirt cracks, weathering, projection texturing, Unreal Engine level setup and diagnostics, scale setup in virtual reality, rebaking normal maps, and rendering in Arnold for Maya.
VFXforFilmmakers.com, the next evolutionary step for storytellers.